Terrence McKenna's son, Dennis McKenna, and they were doing it via Zoom, and so they had like.
So yeah, everybody needs to, I had to mute everybody because that wasn't set correctly. And welcome everybody, the audience. You guys will be muted because we're expecting a big crowd. We've already got 52 people, and we'll get started in just a couple minutes. Larry and guests and hosts can unmute themselves and say something if you want.
Hello everybody, nice to see everybody here. Thank you, looking forward to this. Oh, you're still on mute, I think.
So hi everybody. What's up? I think we should do Zodiac Signs just to get the joint started. I'm Team Taurus in Atlanta, Georgia. Where y'all from? This is going to chat room, and let's just, I want to see what any. Yay. I just want to look in the chat and just see it just blow up real quick with a whole lot of Zodiac signs, a lot of cities and states. Team Scorpio in Tampa. Team Taurus in Portland. 12/12 Sag. Happy birthday to all my Team Sagittarius is out here. What up, Team Pisces in the Bronx, Team Sag in Denver, Team Taurus and Scorpio in Chicago. You have to say Chicago with all the O's. Team Leo in Portland. What's happening? Double Gemini in Portland. Team Scorpio in Greensboro. Canada, Team Virgo, Crabhead. That must be the Team Cancer. What up, Leo? Big shouts out to Larry too. Larry just had a birthday right before he got his in right before Scorpio season went out. He just put his mama through all that stuff before he came out, but he did not want to be a Sagittarius. What up, Team Aries in Portland? More Leos, more Scorpios. What up, Team Sag in Tampa? More Aries. Portland is in the house tonight. Okay, Jayson. Okay, this how you, when Jayson throws a party, everybody shows up. Wow. Okay, Geminis, what's cracking? You know, Geminis, y'all got 6 months before your birthday gets here, so get ready. More Libras. How y'all doing? Only a couple Aries in here. I know y'all catching it with that Mars in retrograde.
Be interesting to see if there's a theme of people that really are coming to this type of event, you know?
You see,
like
I'm
Scorpio
looking.
and Leo's a lot, you know?
This is me gathering data. Matter of fact, I got to get my own. Yeah, welcome aboard, all my Team Zodiacs. This is lovely. I'm going to have some fun tonight. Team Aquarius, New Jersey, what's up? New Mexico is in the building. No Miami? Jayson, you don't have any friends in Miami? This is the cold weather folks. What up, Team Leo? San Francisco Bay Area, Tacoma, Washington in the building. Team Leo. All of y'all want to talk about the soul tonight? Ooh, this is exciting. All right. Iowa City is in the building, Team Cancer. Yay. I love icebreakers like this. You just see all the elements that are like on board.
Well, thank you so much for rolling with that. I think I'm maybe going to go ahead and launch the poll, give people some other stuff to do, which, oh, and I should also turn on my video. Hello. Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started here. We've got a awesome turnout for the Soul Home. I'm launching this poll to get a sense for how many science-leaning folks we have, how many spiritual folks, how many in-betweens, and I think I've got an answer for everybody. You can find that poll. And if you do have a pressing need to say something that's, I don't know, super critical, down in if you open the participants and then open the chat, there's a raise your hand under the ... more, and then that'll let us know. We can't promise anything because we got a big group here, but you can raise your hand. You can comment in the chat. Commenting in the chat too. We got a lot of people, so that could get lost, which is why raise hand is good. I am going to read our preamble, and then we're going to get this show started. This and all Psychedelic Society events and groups presentations are free. We're a 501c3 organization, all volunteer supported. And if you'd like to make a donation, $1, $5, $20, whatever you might want to give us, that helps us do what we do. We're definitely growing here in the psychedelic renaissance and revolution that's going on. You can donate at portlandpsychedelicsociety.org/donate, get you right to donating. We actually also take Venmo now. I will put that in there. Portland Psychedelic Society is our Venmo handle. We also are always looking for volunteers to help with Zooms. That's how I got to what I'm doing right now. Social media, if you're on there, we need your help. And other tasks, whatever you might want to do. There's on the website again at portlandpsychedelicsociety.org, there's a form, and you can tell us what you need to tell us about what you'd like to do, and we'll get back to you. Our events are about learning, education, and sharing and harm reduction. So please refrain from solicitation and illegal activities at PPS events. What you hear is not to be considered medical advice or any other type of advice. It's a place for community members to share experiences and information. We really appreciate your support, and everybody's going to be muted. We are recording. This is being recorded. It's going to be, as soon as I click the button, because I forgot, live stream to Facebook and to YouTube. So that's going on. And I will get to that in a second. Oops. Whoa, now my screen changed. And so, yeah, if you raise your hand or if you put something in the chat, we'll get to you. We're going to just pretty much hand it off in a moment to the presenters, and they're going to run with it because they have massive talent between the three of them. And let's see. I forget what we said about the land acknowledgement. We are on the verge of having a land acknowledgement, and we don't know how to pronounce the tribes, and it's not quite happening. And so I'm not going to take a stab at that unless, Casey, you want to unmute yourself and say something.
Do it, Kazzrie.
Hey, Siri.
Hey. I'll go ahead and do our land acknowledgements. Hi, everybody. I'm with PPS, the family as well. We would like to pay our respects to elders with both past and present who have stewarded this land throughout generations. Portland rests on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Willamette, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapua, Molalla, and many other tribes who have had their homes along the Columbia River. For more information about the Indigenous peoples of Portland, please go to oneskyscenter.org. These are going to be plugged into the chat, by the way. If you're a psychedelic practitioner, please investigate the trachuna.net. Trachuna works toward the responsible use of plant medicines and other psychedelics, that they are preserved, protected, and valued as part of Indigenous cultural identity and integrated into our social and legal and healthcare systems. I'd like to encourage you to contribute to organizations like the Indigenous Environmental Network. Those websites will be listed in the chat, the trachuna.net and oneskyscenter.org. Woo.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I think that's all of our preamble. I even have us, we're almost Facebook Live, and we're probably on YouTube because Jason's on top of that. Unless Jason has something else to say, I think I'm going to hand it off. Normally, I would do more formal introductions of each person, but we've got three fabulous guests, and so I'm going to let Larry start it off and then toss it to one of our others, and they'll explain what we're going to do.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Kazzrie. I appreciate it. It's really nice to be here today. Thank you again for hosting us. I had a really wonderful event with you all at Portland Psychedelic Society about a month ago, maybe something like that, which is kind of where we came up with this idea. We started talking about what is the soul home? What does that look like? What does this existence mean if the soul home is real? And so a lot of those conversations were really interesting, and we thought, hey, wouldn't it be great to just host an event together here for this evening and bring together some amazing speakers like Ohi and Jane and myself, who will just be sort of asking the questions and listening intently. I'll add a bit as well, but it's really an honor to be here with everybody. My name is Larry Norris. As Kazzrie said, I just got my dissertation recently in ayahuasca and meaning making process. So what are the ayahuasca experiences like? What are the types of experiences people are having, and what is their meaning making process for that? I also co-founded and am executive director of Entheogenic Research Integration Education, which is a nonprofit here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We've been offering integration circles and education support since about 2011 now. It's really impressive and amazing to see people come together in a circle and share experiences, kind of like what we're doing tonight, and realize that everyone's coming from their own personal sort of insights and their own personal wisdom and their own allies and their own spirit teachers and things like that. So it's really honor that everyone has as much wisdom as everyone else. And I think that's been something that's been real eye-opening to me, sitting, in awe as somebody has a reflection that's just sort of mind-blowing. So I really appreciate that. Also a co-founder and board member of Decriminalized Nature, which is making some great headway across the US. Obviously, we've passed in Oakland, we passed in Santa Cruz, passed in Ann Arbor, Washington County, Michigan, passed slightly after I shouldn't say passed it. The prosecuting attorney there says he wouldn't prosecute there. And Washington, D.C. ended up getting, I think, 76% of the vote. So sort of overwhelming support by the people. So that's pretty impressive. And there's a lot more happening throughout the U.S. So we're excited to continue on with that. But it's exciting because this is the step forward that we can make where people can then have access to some of these experiences that we're talking to you about today, especially as we have some of these bigger players in terms of big pharma and everything sort of breathing down our necks, so to speak. So that's me. There's a lot more you'll probably learn about me over the course of this talk today, but I just want to give you a little intro and then also a little intro to the event. And after we're done with our introductions here, we'll all give a little bit of our own definition of what the soul home is, and then we can kind of open it up from there. So I'll just go in the order of the screens here. I have Ohi next. So Ohi, you want to give a little intro?
Did you say Oye? Oh, what's up, everybody? My name is Oye Sun Adu. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, Team Taurus, and I'm your favorite astrologer's favorite astrologer. Big shouts out to all my Libras, Scorpios, and Sagittarius, as y'all are really running amok right now. Big shouts out to all my psychonauts. I helped put together with a lot of amazing people here, the Detroit Psychedelic Conference, the only live psychedelic conference in the world in 2020. That was huge and amazing. I definitely thought I was finished after I helped organize that and that I would just be chilling until next year's conference, but that has not been the case. I represent the interests of Kalindi Iyi, the Iyi family, and the KI network. We are the Jedi. We are the warrior priesthood, and we high dose. We micro dose too, and we do other things as well. But tonight, and I'm also, of course, representing all of my ancestors as well, and spirit guides too. I got a degree in professional history. I just got into these psychonautic things about 2 years ago, and I'm just amazingly excited to be here and winging it. Y'all missed all the pre-party stuff where they was like, are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? I was like, please don't ask me to do anything. I just want to just flow because I love these type of conversations. And I've been going back listening to the blogs that Kalinde had with me. So we have like an archive. He did like 13 3-hour blogs of just like pouring. And so now, since he has transitioned into an ancestor, listening to these words again, not only are they emotional, they're like triple educational. And so it just so happens that even though this was set up a month ago, I started listening, and then the episode about soul houses or built like where's your house? Like what house are you a member of? And that's one of the most recent ones. So I'm just super excited. Y'all should have pen and paper for certain. And please put everything in the chat. You got questions or whatever, just put it in the chat. So like we can just, I want this to be gumbo organic. That's me. So peace.
Jane, I think you're on mute still.
1 second. I need to unmute Jane because her. I will do that 1 second. I'm sorry. Where is that?
100 participants. 100 people came out. I'm just want to say big shouts out to all of you. Big up yourself. Big up yourself, everybody that came out tonight.
I'm sorry.
Am I good to go?
Have you, Jane?
Am I good to go yet?
Yes, we're hearing.
We have me on the other audio, so I'm getting an echo. Can you unmute my other? It's a phone. Okay.
You're sounding pretty clear to us.
Here we go. Unmute. I know, but I was getting an echo. Okay, still getting an echo on my. Yeah. All right. So anyway, I will just talk when I'm hearing my.
I'm so
I'm
sorry.
sorry about that.
All right, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Awesome.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm Jane Latimer, and I started out very dysfunctional, messed up kid, and had spent many, many years trying to figure out my life and what made me tick. I was eating disordered for 20 years, and of course, a child of the 60s, probably I'm older than most of you here, so we did a lot of playing around with LSD and all sorts of stuff back then. At that time, I had a huge awakening through my first LSD experience, which completely changed the course of my life. And at that time, I decided to go ahead and heal spiritually. So that changed the trajectory of my life. And since that point, I was moving on a spiritual trajectory. It bordered on psychosis. But I was able to get through it because I didn't see any psychiatrists at the time, found a spiritual program, which I'd love to get into, talk a little bit about later, and became a psychotherapist because there was nothing else out there that actually matched, as far as I could tell, what it was that I wanted to do. So needing to heal myself first, and that's been my priority, is healing myself. And then as I healed myself, wanting to be of service to help other people heal. So I started a program on eating disorder recovery as I healed from my own eating disorder. And from that point forward, I began working as an entrepreneur and as a healer, as a therapist, working with many, many women, with my own online business, actually. And then it all fell apart. So it was like another huge journey of loss, and went through a lot of dark night of the soul, traveling around until I finally came back to Portland. I sat down in the middle of my house and I said, I am going to stay here, and I don't care, dear God, whatever has to happen, I'm going to stay in my home and I'm going to do what I'm here to do. And within a few months, I had done my first MDMA journey. And that was the first time in my life that I saw and realized who I was, that I belonged to myself for the very first time in my life. And what I saw very interestingly was it was not about my parents, but it was about the culture. And from that point on, it was like I landed, I found my purpose, I found my soul purpose, I moved forward, and I started giving presentations through PPS. I started opening up, clients started coming from all over the place. And so as I've been growing through this process of entheogen discovery and exploration, walked into a period of my life where all of a sudden I was shown another home. As well, Larry never thought of it that way, but that was given to me spontaneously. It wasn't something I was looking for. That is what came together and made it really clear what my life was about. So that was the next level. That's why I'm here. When Jayson asked me to join Larry in this discussion, I was absolutely thrilled. I run a program called Psych Alchemy now, and I train others in doing the work that I do.
Great. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Yogi. Should I just go ahead and sort of go from here, or Kazzrie, did you want to share anything?
You're the appropriate person to kick it off and explain how we got here, what your position is, and then you can each maybe take a turn talking about what the soul home is, because there's a good chunk of the audience that Would like to know that.
Sure. Yeah. So, there's probably 500 different other maybe definitions for what we're talking about. There's probably spiritual texts that call it one thing. There's probably, people that have been doing this in the underground that call it another thing. This is a term that I sort of came up with. It's probably not even unique, but it was the one that I used for my dissertation work. And the big question was, there's this place that people would go to, and oftentimes it would require an upgrade, they call it, or a surgery, or some sort of a death and dismemberment, or some sort of experience to get them out of their mind, their body, their ego, that type of thing. And then they go to this place where they're like, a lot of people said, I've never seen this place before, but everything there was so familiar. I'd never been there before, but I realized the creatures were talking to me as if I co-created this place, and this place was my space, and all the teachers I knew, and all the mentors I knew, and all the ancestors, and they were all there. They were sitting there. All, maybe the akashic records are there. You had the library of all knowledge was there, and then this sort of idea that that's where we are original, and here is kind of the illusion that we're co-creating together to be in this space, to sort of live life, to have experience in these types of things. So my specific topic area was around integration. So one of the people's, about meaning making. And so it was like, how do people make meaning of these experiences? And one person made a really interesting comment, which was basically the insight that he had from his experiences, that we have integration backwards, because we're not trying to integrate the soul home back to this illusory experience. We're trying to come up with what's happening here in this illusory experience and bring that back to the soul home. So our integration process is actually in reverse. We're learning here to bring back there, right? And so through that conversation, I got really interested, like, well, what does that mean? What are the implications for the reality of nature? What are the implications for integration? What are the implications for consciousness? What are the implications for a synthetic versus a natural, if what we're doing is we're opening up a space to our soul home? So this is something that I've been very fascinated with. I've also had sort of this experience as well, and it's very unique in that you're in a space where it's like everything is possible, everything is available, and information, oftentimes more than you can really handle, is there. But yet the sense is it's so familiar. It's such a place that really, really, really well. And so today this conversation really going to be kind of about that. What does that look like? How does that mean? What are things like, maybe I can ask you this later. What does astrology mean if all of this is created by our soul home? That's a good question, right? A lot of different things that we can talk about, and even questions such as like, if each of us have a unique soul home, but we also agree that everything is one, how do those two coexist together? It's sort of this infinite fractal kind of understanding of consciousness that we're looking at really here. And so those are the types of conversations that I'd like to kind of bring up and sort of let evolve as this kind of goes through. And I'm sure everyone else will have great things to say as well. But that's just a little sort of intro. And then, like I say, I guess my definition of the soul home would be that a place that's where our soul kind of lives or exists. And then this is sort of a byproduct or an outcome or an epiphenomena, I think is one of the Portland Psychedelic Society folks said last time, a byproduct of our experience in the soul home is here existing there. So I'll pass that around again, just go in line here from Ohi, and then we'll go Jane afterwards. What is your sort of idea or thought process around soul home to you, or when you came into this event, what were you thinking it was? And, how are you sort of thinking about the soul home personally? Ohi, go ahead.
Woo-wee. How do you follow the doctor like that? Yes, this is the illusion. We spend 90% of our energy struggling to stay here in this rest area. My man calls it this bag of flesh, with air in it. And the programming here, like I can't address like the soul home without just acknowledging, as a strategist, the tactics of the sinister to keep me distracted, to keep you distracted, to keep the other millions of people distracted from saying, let me listen to someone that's going to tell me that everything I'm experiencing now doesn't matter and it's an illusion and there's something far grander, but I really do need to be here so I can experience different parts of myself, which is all, right? That's just like, how do we get so distracted? Like, I want to get into that piece. You know what I'm saying? Of course, you know, we could throw it out in an umbrella thing and just be like, well, religion did a great job and blah, blah did a great job. But there's also, as I always tell people, one of my teachers said, plant the seed and walk away. So the things that I've gathered, no one put a gun to my head or held my arm behind my back. And that's kind of like my policy too. Well, if I got here where I'm at and I know this is an illusion and I'm trying to get back home, then what did I do on my own volition? Well, whatever I did, somebody else could do it, because you have a soul, you have a spirit, you have a mind, and you get to make choices. Now, yes, my astrology chart is set up differently, you know, than everyone else's, because it's like a fingerprint. But I think for me, it started with self-discovery. Like, I wanted mastery, but then I was like, on the way to self-mastery, I had to do self-discovery. And then when the discovery happened, was like, this stuff ain't even real, player. You know, and they're like, oh, they say time is an illusion. Well, that means all of this is an illusion. And then one of Baba Kalindi's things, he said, we existed before time. Oh, you know, that one was crazy. What do you mean before time? Yeah, he said, we come from magic. We come from the things that created stars. What? Like, our star is a relatively young star here in this particular sector of existence. I don't even hardly use universe too much, because once I was tapped into multiverse, I just say existence. So this relatively young star that we have, though, is a data point. Just like when you look on a map and you're trying to put a pin down and say, you know, meet me at the Kroger up on Cascade and I'll meet you there in 5 minutes. And so that's kind of like this sun that's close to us, that some say is 93 million miles a day away, but then you have the flat earthers. The flat earthers say that the sun is only 6,000 miles away. But either way, it's still transferring a lot of data down to us. And we have to be able to raise our levels of consciousness, surrender from the struggle, the things that, the limitations that we're fighting for, in order for us to get some of this data that's going to like start to fire and click, so we can like start weaving our way outside of this illusion, while I still control this jacket of flesh. Like, I don't want to die to get out, right? Like, there's tons of data that there are immortals here. I study immortality. I'm a Taoist. Heavily research into immortality, hundreds of thousands of years old people existing here in small pockets on the planet. I wouldn't want to show up either to people who believe in death. And now all of a sudden there are these immortals where we have tons of movies about how we resist. So that's why I was just, when I saw 100 people here, I was just like, yo, I'm so excited that 100 people want to hear and interact in this gumbo, because we all come from the same belly of the star. There's no coincidences that you had time to free up tonight. You know, we all had this synchronicity, like white blood cells, that we would surface at a certain time. And so right now, this is kind of like a spiritual, soulful family reunion. So that's my take, just to get it started. I'm going to pass it on to Jane. I'm very curious what she has to say.
Thank you.
Jane, let me jump in 1 second and say, yeah,
okay.
There's only, we cap at 100. There's actually about 30 people on YouTube and Facebook also watching live right now.
Got it.
You're getting me nervous. You're getting me nervous, but no, I'll go ahead. So first of all, I actually think this is a fascinating topic. I think before I realized that, first of all, I want to make a distinction between spirit and soul. So for me, when I was starting out, I had my first spiritual awakening in the subway in New York City in my early 20s, like on the subway, right? I mean, I was definitely thrust into the area, love and spirit. And I knew that that was a truth. And then I worked on myself for decades to actually live my life. I was committed to live my life from that place of love. And in the process of doing that, you know, you go through different stages in the spiritual process. And one of the stages at least I went through, was this concept or idea of source, so that we have a source, we are a spiritual source. And in that non-dual place, that's the word that's thrown around, like we're all one. So there's definitely that level of spiritual dimension. But what was most and I was able to move into that space, understand that space relatively easily. The source, the oneness, that all came like that LSD trip in the early 20s was quick, was profound and very, very deeply meaningful, and led me on a trajectory. But even more meaningful than that was later on, when I realized the difference of that I was actually an individuated aspect of source, which I would call the soul. And that my soul has a trajectory that is different from other souls. And therefore, each one of us we cannot see each other as one unless we are also able to see each other in the diversity that each one of us is as a soul, very, very different one from the other. And so there has to be an embracing of both those places. So the concept also for me of illusion, I do not believe that this is an illusion. I'm sorry, always I'm going to disagree with you on that. So I feel like this is another dimension. We are in a physical dimension, and it's very real in the dimension that we're in. But I think what we're referring to, at least what I refer to when people call illusion, I would call we're more enculturated into the conditioned trance. So when we're walking around as separate egos, we are walking around with the belief that is coming from all that we know when we've been raised in our families, in our conditioned families, and most of us in traumatized families, whether it's individual trauma or whether it's collective trauma, because it's all collective trauma. And I'm calling that is the trance that we're actually living in. And that's what we need to start breaking through. And when we start to see, and that's what I saw, that basically my parents were as much a victim as I was a victim of the trance itself. And because they couldn't see the reality of who they were as souls, they were trapped in a trance, and I became hypnotized in the trance. And so the awakening is this awakening process out of the trance, right? Out of the trance into the understanding that we are of source, that we all can go back to source. I know without a shadow of a doubt that I do not die, and I will never die. But this particular personality in this particular form will die, and then I'll have the opportunity to come back or go into other. So what I am most interested in discussing here, Larry, is the idea that not only do we have a human dimension, but we have intergalactic dimensions, and we have the opportunity to actually visit ourselves and the way that we've come into form in many different planetary systems, as well as the Earth system that we happen to be in right now. And that's the tremendous freedom. So my business is helping people heal from complex PTSD. So when so much of that is embedded in the psychological, so that's healing on the Earth dimension, right? On the human Earth dimension, and trying to figure out, how do I be a better human being? But what I found one of the greatest assists is to understand that a lot of what we're healing from, a lot of what causes the trauma in this life actually comes from other lives, not only other lives in this dimension, in the Earth dimension, but also other lives in interplanetary lives, as well as galactic lives. So we are dealing with traumas that we brought in as a soul. We've co-created our own trauma so that we can then heal. And it's a crazy mixed up mystery, but we actually come in, we create the trauma so that we can heal from it. So that's where I stand on the whole issue.
Oh, all right. So yeah, I'm going to follow you two now. Okay, great. No, I think there's two things that were really, and I guess we can just kind of go from here and kind of kick the discussion off, because you kind of both mentioned something that I think is kind of interesting. Both this idea of this multiverse, this interplanetary, interdimensional kind of existence, is maybe the soul home just us viewing another interplanetary world or a multiverse, that type of thing. So I really like this conversation of multiverse because, you know, I used to, had a Jungian professor that I always would kind of upset a little bit here and there. I'd say, well, are the archetypes Earth-based, or what if you're in another planetary system? Are those same archetypes here? Or what is collective unconscious? Are we part of their collective unconscious? Are they part of ours? How does that work? Never really like to answer that too much, but I think that's a really important, especially when we're talking about consciousness and the broadness, the greatness, the infinite level of kind of unconsciousness. And I also like the idea that you mentioned, Jane, about sort of this idea that all is in one or one is in all. Both of those are unified. Both of those are non-dual to some degree, but allows for that diversity, allows for that sort of insight of your particular lessons or learnings or healings of trauma or whatever that might be, your creative process, whatever that might be, by allowing us to have sort of our unique being. Otherwise, it would be kind of boring. I think the universe would be bored with us, right? But here we all exploring sort of our different sort of teachings and our different lessons and insights and these types of things. And so I think that's one dynamic that, you know, we often think of, like everything goes into one, unified kind of in the Western world. But I know in many indigenous cultures, they talk about this sort of one is in all things and that type of kind of conversation. So I don't know if any of you want to sort of comment on that. We could also go over some questions, but I'm just going to kind of open the floor for discussion. And also, Kazzrie, I don't know how, should we also open, maybe just put the questions in the chat box if people want to do questions, or are we going to open this up for a discussion at some point?
I think with three guests and 2 hosts, and I've got quite a few co-hosts, which are leadership and board members, probably the other 100 people are going to need to put their question in the chat, please.
Great. And I should probably also open it up if anyone of the other co-hosts or Portland Psychedelic folks want to offer their kind of insight on this. So it might be interesting to hear what you all think.
Larry, you absolutely triggered something when you said that. So in marketing, I had to learn a lot about marketing to get my message out as a Black Taoist who does entheogens, who used to be a felon, who comes from a dysfunctional family. Like, I was like, I'm not hearing my message anywhere from like one specific place. And I went to a lot of coaching, and a guy was like, you know, you pray all the time. And I was like, and he was like, you should be known as the guy who like prays when he opens up his video. Like at the beginning of all my videos that I host, I kind of like synergize by saying that. And then when I leave, I always say, you know, I found you in peace. I'm gonna leave you in prayer. But at the beginning, when I always open up, that's the affirmation I say is, I am in the love of all, and all love is in me. I am a part of all, and all is a part of me. I am one with all, and all is one with me. And I can succeed as a part of all as long as my wish is to stay a part of all. I can be all that I wish in all as long as my wish is to stay in all. I am never alone. All is, I am. All can, I can. All does, I do. And then there's another language at the end. It says, Istanjay, Ilaku, which means salvation to you all. And so then we can go look into like, what is salvation to Jane? What is salvation to me? What is salvation to Ann, to Peggy, to Jayson, to Terry, right? And that realization of that I am never alone, and that if all can do, then so can I. My latest revelation in that is, what's the last 2 words you say when you get married to someone? There's all this pomp and circumstance, but then guess what? It boils down to, I do. You know, like that's the contract. The universe has a contract with us. How do we want to engage in doing this thing, whether it's from transform, whether it's an illusion, whether it's dimension, whether it's travel? Do you have salvation? And your I don't want to say your definition of salvation, because it's not your definition of water. Everybody knows that's H2O. But when we start getting into other words, like, I think that's the distraction, is when we start saying, oh, it means this to me, and this is my truth, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but the truth is you can't live down here for 6 minutes without oxygen. You know what I mean? Let's get to some things we can agree upon. But this kind of conversation opens it up. And that's why I go back to the belly of the star. Like, we are, obviously I did something to attract my tribe here this evening that's got things they want to communicate to me, and I'm supposed to share with some of you because I'm a big cosmic contract person. How do you get off this plane and get back to your house? You have to fulfill your cosmic contracts. It's just like Ethereum or cryptocurrency. You don't fulfill the contract, you gotta stay here. You're in arrears. So a lot of us have spiritual and cosmic contracts for people. My number one thing I just want to share is leaving family members behind. I'm not going to suffer with family members as they want to struggle with the ideal of death, disease, sickness, poverty. That's on y'all. But I have to get to my particular salvation, and I'll swing back around maybe next time, or maybe I'll be a planet that affects them in their astrological chart in the future, you know, if there is a future. But that's just my piece on that. Thank you, Larry.
I'd like to say something may I address something that Always Sun said? I love what you just said about contract with self and spiritual and cosmic contract. I think that piece is absolutely crucial. And I know until we are able to be in touch with that inside of ourselves and know that, it will never feel right. We will never be living the right life. And in order to do that, it is crucial to say yes to that small voice within, that place that's inside that is always speaking to us, and being able to distinguish that small voice, that very subtle voice from within, from the loud voices of the trance. And I talk about that a lot. We always have the choice to distract ourselves with addictions and entertainment and whatever else is coming our way, versus really listening to that inner voice that knows exactly what I am or you are supposed to do in this very moment in time. And until we're able to get the junk out of the way to where we're able to actually hear that and take that step and focus on that, we won't be in line with that contract, or that spiritual cosmic contract. I love that term, because that's really all we have. That's as soon as we step into alignment and accept that contract and live that contract out to our fullest, then it doesn't matter what else we do, because we know we're on purpose. And that does come from the spiritual soul center. It doesn't come from anything in this culture that tells us anything about shit, right? It just comes from that soul place.
And the fine print keeps on going on these soul contracts. I just want to just emphasize that. Like, the writing gets bigger, then it starts getting smaller and smaller. And you haven't really read the fine print. You know you're reading the fine print when you say these two words, oh shit. That you found something else in your fine print that you didn't know that you definitely have a responsibility to.
So what's great about this flowing conversation is this is something that really wouldn't have talked about before, but this is great. I love this idea too about universal contracts. And it makes me think about, because from a universal contract, it's really easy to go with the fate. Okay, everything is fated. We don't have free will of choice, those types of things. And so for me, I pondered this a lot. Like, okay, do we have free will? Is there a choice process we're doing? Is there a direction we're going to? Is there a lesson we're learning if we make choices to get on or off that path? And I thought a lot about this in terms of like coincidence and synchronicity. Like, what is a coincidence and what is a synchronicity? How does it display in this three-dimensional plane? Because it's something that's just so out there, but it's like, it's letting you know that you're on your path. It's letting you know that you're in alignment with your universal contract. And you can make your choices to kind of be off or on that sort of road. But these sort of synchronicities, at least for myself, sort of open up. The more you're on your path, the more synchronicities open up, more coincidences, more alignments can open up. And so I almost thought, has anyone ever seen the Carl Sagan multi-dimensional, like he takes a 4-dimensional plane and tries to add it to a 3-dimensional plane. So he says a sphere in one realm looks like a circle in this realm because you're cutting down plane layers, and then you go down to the point or whatever. So I started thinking about synchronicity in that sort of way. Is synchronicity the sort of cut out version of the sphere for like the chess move that we're making on a higher dimensional plane? So we're like, okay, we need to go from point A to point B, and here's your path. I'm making this path. We don't see that path being taken because we're here in this physical realm, but all of a sudden we're starting seeing the synchronicities. And so that's the cutout, if you will, of this sort of larger play that's happening on sort of a higher dimensional plane. And so then if we see synchronicities, we can kind of flow with it. Okay, we're on the right path, we're on the right movement, we're following our move, but at the same time, like, you know, it allows for us to make a mistake, you know, and also you're not seeing synchronicities. So there's free will there. Okay, you're making your choices, but all of a sudden these things aren't opening up. So maybe I'm not on my path. So how do I get back on and get back in alignment? Just kind of open that up if you guys want to share anymore.
I think the answer, my particular to that is the answer to a question Jayson asked: what type of exercises used alongside with plant medicine can help an individual discover their soul home? Meditation. Meditation is lifting weights for the brain, which then lift weights for the spirit. Like, you can't communicate, you can't hear God's voice with a lot of struggle going on. You can't hear the supreme tone of the orchestra that's playing. If God has angels, then obviously they have harps, and you can't hear the music and get your footwork right if you got a bunch of junk going on in the head. So for me, the saving grace of several dark night of the souls has been my connection to my meditation. And that doesn't mean quieting the mind. Like, my meditation is quite different than that. My meditation is observing the breath. Sunyata taught me prayer is the art of speaking and not listening, and meditation is the art of listening and not speaking. So let the mind run out, and then after a while it'll kind of get tired, and then you don't have to engage with it. And then you start listening to what's really the most important is your breath. So God breathed breath into man, he became a living soul. So listen to the breath. That's the key back to the soul. Then things start to happen.
That's really interesting. So I'd like to add to that, if I may. So I agree. I think breath is absolutely crucial. Meditation is crucial, but there's so many different forms of meditation. And I know in my work, so I'll just throw this in from my work, I couldn't have listened to my breath in the beginning. There was just like, I was so, I was in so much overwhelm, so consumed with the addictions that I was in, that there was really very barely any room for that kind of practice. But I was committed. But the work that I did was called it was a type of alchemy. So it was a transmutational light work is what I call it now. And I found a school that taught me how to actually use energy to actually so two pieces of this. Learning how to master my mind was one stage of it. So I had to learn that the chaotic flow of the monkey mind, I had to learn how to master that mind. So I actually did things like change my negative thinking into positive thinking. These are sort of stages on the way. So I had to master my thinking mind, but I also learned how to actually call on source energy and utilize it through what I was trained in as a form of light work, which is a type of vibrational healing. So use that vibrational healing to transmute the negative or the denser or the lower, what we were called the lower frequency energies that I was immersed in. So that energy I wasn't trying to get rid of it. I was actually utilizing it to heal, and so that it would step up an octave. So for example, the rage that I was feeling turned into a very powerful strength. So that would be an example of that. So that instead of like using the rage to throw tantrums and to yell and scream and all that kind of stuff, instead what I did was bring the source energy or the light energy into that rage and then transmute that energy into a higher frequency, which then was able to turn into more power and strength in time. So I work the meditation in a very different way than what people would typically think of as emptying or witnessing. So witnessing is a very important piece as well, but also transmuting is important.
And thank you both. I appreciate it. So I'm going to ask a question. I know there's a lot of questions in the chat box, but there's so many happening. I'm not doing a very good job reading them. So if any Portland folks want to throw something out, but one question that I know that's been sort of percolating a lot and it's kind of a big conversation, and I'm just kind of curious your both thoughts on this. Is this, and obviously, Jane has a lot of experience with LSD, so you might have a particular opinion from the synthetic side of things. But if what we're doing is opening up a dimension to ourselves, to our soul home, to these multidimensional universes, is there a difference in natural material that grows out versus out of the ground, perhaps, or that we sort of put together versus something that somebody makes in a laboratory? Are there the same experience? Are there the same homes happening there? Is it opening the same dimensions? What are your sort of thoughts on that? Because I know this is a conversation. A lot of people say, oh, this is a appeal to nature fallacy. We talk about decrim nature, that type of thing. Their synthetics are just as safe and but yeah, well, the nature ones are the ones that are illegal are pretty good. Yeah, you can say arsenic and all that kind of stuff, but the ones that are illegal are the ones we're talking about here. So what are your thoughts on synthetic versus natural, especially if we're talking about these sacred spiritual spaces, these soul homes? Is there I know Kalini talked about this a lot, there's an information in the natural material that's sort of embedded, especially with mushrooms, things like that. And so is there an advantage to working with nature versus synthetics, or your kind of thoughts on that?
Oh, well, you can't let the Tantra guy answer because I'm going to do it just like sex, right? So they have toys that you can go buy at the erotic shop, but it'll never replace a human. It'll never replace a human. So there's a synthetic sexual satisfaction that you can receive, but there's not the same connection as there is to another human. That's how I keep it for 13-year-olds if they're on here, but everyone should know what I'm speaking of. So I'm partial to the natural, but I'm also a guy that takes BC powder if I get a headache. And I do know, I should squeeze this point right here in my hand so the headache will go away, and get some peppermint and things like that. It's how do you want to fight this battle? So for like headaches, I might go with synthetics, and then I go research why did the headache come, so then I take control of those circumstances. But as far as entheogens across the board, I vote for the natural. And especially since I have more experience with 5-MeO-DMT from the toad, there's an amazingly, what I call ridiculous debate going on between the synthetic community and the natural community, when there shouldn't even be a divide in my mind. But yeah, I want what this earth has for me. But then, hey, there was natural intelligence that made something synthetic as well. That's a part of all as well. So I think it's up to the individual, but I'm always looking for the best. So I think that's something that I would rather connect with a lovely young lady to make love with than something that is an assimilation of a lovely young lady. Jane, did I say that good enough for like 13-year-olds, Jane?
Yeah, you did a good job with that. Well, that's really an interesting question, because I actually was listening to a podcast. I don't remember, unfortunately, the guy's name today. He's a doctor and an MD and a PhD, and he was talking about medicine work. He was a psychiatrist, right? He was talking about, and he was actually making the point that all of our synthetics, all of our drugs come from the plant world to begin with. So that's where they all get their origin. Personally, I had one of my most major experiences on ibogaine. Now, what ibogaine is a derivative of iboga plant, right? I had no difficulty in connecting with the spirit of iboga on ibogaine. And I found my place of belonging on MDMA. So there's no way I'm gonna, ditch that one. So I feel very strongly that, okay, so if we're talking about soul, we're talking about spirit, right? As soon as we dissolve the ego, we have access to to nature. We have access to our natural spirit, our natural soul. And it, in some ways, I don't want to say it doesn't matter what we use to actually make that connection more powerful, but and I think plant medicines are beautiful, and we want plant medicines. We want to use what's most natural, and I haven't personally felt a difference at all in my capacity to connect with my own soul, my own spirits with not natural medicines.
I had
So that would be.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's my response. I would like to make the case. I even joked about it once. I wished I was a mostly plant medicine person. I wished I was. It would fit the image better. But the reality is it doesn't matter in my experience.
I had a friend of mine who made a really good argument one time with me. We had the same conversation. I've been kind of curious about this for a while. And the idea was around like, okay, we hear within sort of indigenous cultures, at least in South America, that, well, it's been termed as plant teacher or plant guide. Perhaps the better term is one who offers knowledge, rather than the Western version of a teacher kind of thing, right? And so I was having a kind of discussion with my friend who really loves LSD, and like, okay, so how does this plant teacher idea work with LSD? Is there still a consciousness there? Is there still a learning process? And she made some really good points about the idea that LSD is like a child. It only was just around, sort of ergotamine and those types of things, maybe much longer, but LSD was only just, with late 40s, early 50s, that type of thing. And it was still learning about human culture. So it's like a co-learning process that we're having with the plants or with the synthetics. And that her argument was that LSD is just really, really young. And of course, unfortunately, some of the first experiences of LSD is through the military. So now LSD is learning about humanity through these very strange ways, and so can have this kind of different. So we're sort of teaching. It's like a back and forth sort of dynamic. It's a relational dynamic that's happening. So it's not just that one that's offering knowledge to us, but we're also offering knowledge to the plants or to the synthetics. So I thought that was a really interesting idea around looking at these consciousnesses, if you will, of these substances, and where LSD would fall in terms of something that has much more. Probably mushrooms, that's the easiest one because you just pick and eat it, versus maybe even ayahuasca, which has to be more recent because there's a modulation of the DMT and the MAOI. So looking at maybe mushrooms have a really long historical sort of understanding of humanity over the course of time, and some of these synthetics are maybe just a little bit more recent. What are your thoughts on that? Any ideas?
Yeah, I want the odor. I want that 67 Mustang versus the 2020 Ford Mustang. For, I don't know, safety reasons maybe, because I know that the earth is producing, there's going to be less flaw in this mushroom growing organically. The chances are going to be less for error than someone in the laboratory that I'm not sure about. Now, if you teach me how to make LSD, that's another story. But right now, getting where I need to go, what I'm using right now that's natural, I'm with the, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, I do like to explore, but there's certain levels of knowing things. I can listen to evidence, experience, and reason. So I can get some evidence from you. I can get some experience from Jane, and I can get some reason from Jayson. Then I start drawing out what I need. But I got to come back to me first, because I'm at the center of my universe, multiverse, and my existence. Like, we are the dot in the center of the circle that's on the cap of the mushroom. All these gills that are coming out, the sporulation is just us. So this is like spores meet, but I'm gonna stick with the older, more natural version for right now. But it's also, you made me think, Jane, when you were talking, or you, Nick Sands, LSD, before Nick Sands died, he sent Dr. Jerry, who's the toad guy, he sent him like the last batch of his LSD before he died, or a last batch that he'd been working on for 25 years. I had 6 tabs of that, and then 2 days later, I had Yopo. So I had the highest, which was way too much because I never done LSD. And then I also, And then I had I started with Nick Sands. I started with too much of Nick Sands LSD, not just regular. And then I went right to Yopo, which Jerry had got from Peru. So I got to see that with just a 36-hour rest period. I don't think it was 36 hours in between that. It wasn't, because then I did peyote in between that. So yeah, I guess from my experience, I'm gonna lean more to the natural.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I just want to add to this discussion is I think medicine calls to us, you know, and so I mean, all I had access to in my 20s was LSD. I mean, that was all that was really available. So I really didn't have a choice. MDMA called to me. So mushrooms did not call to me. I had friends and colleagues who were like, their relationship was with mushrooms, but they didn't call to me. So I think we have to trust what we're called to. And that's the most important aspect of that relationship. You know, and then later, as I went along, I was able to then harness a relationship with mushrooms, for example. But it was difficult in the beginning. It was not a friendly, happy relationship. It was not a happy relationship. So I could see why I waited. I had to have enough of my own self on board before I was able to go in that direction towards that particular medicine. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, that's great. This is probably a little bit off track from what we're talking about, but I think it's so interesting. You know, what are the consciousness? You know, how are we relating to these consciousnesses? I often think of the story that probably everyone's heard about, Maria Sabina, and they said, oh well, you know, some Sandoz laboratory folks came down and they gave, I think it was called indocybin or psilocybin, basically synthetic psilocybin, and said, hey, is this like your mushrooms? And you know, it's so funny when Western scientists do that, but they don't exactly think about like set and setting. You know, you gave it to Maria Sabina in a place where she constantly opens the portal to the other world, and then said, "Is this thing also as good as everything else?" Whereas maybe it would have been different had it been in sort of a laboratory in Sandoz in Switzerland. You know, so I think that's also something that we're talking about, is the set and setting, the portals that we're opening, and the ability for these to be keys, or are they the presences? Do they have wisdom of their own? Or are they more open spaces? So this is all kind of just interesting, because maybe we have two skeleton keys, and one opens one door, one opens another door, and where are the different places that we're going to, and can we find the linkages so that we can get those same insights, to get those same lessons. But I'm certainly not, for anyone in here, I've explored with a lot of different things. I'm not necessarily, you know, saying synthetics are bad or anything by any means. I also prefer natural myself, but I've had some pretty impressive synthetic experiences. But I was just curious in terms of the idea of consciousness and the idea of understandings of these materials as something more than just a substance, but actually something with wisdom in it, something that with teachings in it, those types of things.
Well, it's interesting, Larry, because you're talking about the way I'm listening and I'm hearing you talk about these substances having a consciousness of their own, which I agree that there is. And it was really important when I did Ibogaine. I really wanted to have an experience of the consciousness or the spirit of Iboga, right? And I was afraid I wasn't going to get it, but I really did get it. I was amazed. And at the same time, the consciousness that the set and setting and the intention that we hold is crucial. So I had one of my most major openings on a synthetic, which was 3-MMC. And but it was the power. I had the strongest intention I had ever had in my whole life. And it ties totally into this topic, because I went into that journey with 3-MMC. I wanted to know where I was from, why I was here, what went wrong. Those were my questions, and they were really powerful and really strong. And as soon as that medicine came on, that's when I was given those answers. And that was the first time I got to experience the trajectory of my soul, where I had come from in source level, another planetary. I was shown what happened to me as I came through the veil into the earth and lost consciousness of that, and how my spirit family left me alone. I was shown the life path of this earth as a path of initiation, that I had to pass certain tests. Everything became very clear and everything made sense. But it didn't matter at that point what the medicine was. When I look back on it, it was the power of my intention that brought that to me.
Yeah, it's almost like we have maybe there's like when we leave the soul home place, there's like, okay, here are a couple codes, your video game codes, right? 3-MCC for you, maybe LSD, maybe some MDMA, maybe mushrooms, maybe ayahuasca, whatever it are, these kind of, and then that it's because if we're speaking to the consciousness of the plants or the synthetic or whatever the material we're working with, but we're also talking about the soul home, there has to be some relationship that seems that consciousness to take us to that place. It almost has to know the path or know the map to where it is to get us there. So I think that's, another just interesting thing as we sort of grapple with these ideas of consciousness and ingesting consciousness and then where it takes us in terms of out of this body altogether. I did see, just real quick, I saw one question here about big pharma, natural sources, and peyote being at risk of being over-harvested, et cetera, how to protect our natural allies. And I think this is a really important thing too. And that's why, with Decriminalized Nature, we're trying to do this right now, is to make sure that our plant allies don't disappear, because outside of over-harvesting, you have agribusiness, you have mining companies, you have people that are stripping the top layers of the soil off. And as long as, in the entire state of California, you can't even if you don't eat it, you can't even grow a peyote button. So if mining and agribusiness is continually destroying the land, and here we are not able to grow anywhere, same with mushrooms, mushrooms grow much more easily, but you can't even watch a mushroom grow here in California, So those types of things are very, very interesting in terms of like, how do we sort of save these sort of keys or consciousness or allies that take us to the place that's somewhere else, but at the same time, there's an active destruction of the land to make sure that we don't have access to that. And that's kind of an interesting conversation too, because then what is this sort of medley of interactions that we're having here on planet Earth, that one interaction wants to sort of destroy these allies and another are trying to conserve and protect and make sure it's growing and make sure it's not sort of falling apart. I think, he's got something to say that. You're on mute.
My question is always, can they? I'm from like, if we say big pharma is the devil, then why give the devil so much power? How do you know what he can do? Oh, well, I've seen what he's done in the past. And yeah, but do you know about Young Adrias, which was the last extinction level event on planet Earth that we've been recycled 6 or 7 times? We don't know how many billions of years old this planet is. We don't know how many billions of years this universe is. We have everything like very, like I said, small. We're captured in such a small mind. Like, I would say that the sinister doesn't want me to access it, because then he'll no longer be able to utilize my resources. But can he destroy it? And I also believe that we're all GMO. We're all genetically modified organisms. Every day I reproduce new cells to help something else inside of my body. At least that's what's supposed to happen in a healthy body, which I'm striving for. But can my paranoia empower what I think can become a reality? Because in the string theory, what I think exists, and the more people I get to thinking about it, you know what I'm saying? The faster it's gonna happen. So I believe I speak hip hop too. So there's a song about like not talking about the devil. When we used to be in the streets, you do not talk about the police. You don't talk about the police. They just magically show up. So I try to keep my conversations around what can we do as a community to continue to discover ourselves and leave positive examples. Can I get 1 million folks doing that? Because 1 million folks doing that without distraction is going to be, in my opinion, way more empowering for me to keep on addressing my enemy. Oh my God, he may do this next. He may do that next. He may do this next. But then it keeps me from doing anything. And that's the problem. We got so many people, we got so many city councils asking questions about what if this happens, Larry? What if this happens, Larry? That you ain't voted on nothing. We're not advancing. Some people want this medicine now, right? So that's just my piece. Can they? Like, what can I do though? What about my natural power? What about my natural power when my natural power is unleashed and I'm trying to get to my soul home? Can anyone stop me from that? If I'm really set my intent to return home, to wake up from this illusion, to move from this trance to another reality, to move from this dimension to another dimension, who gonna stop me? As my man Jay-Z say, who gonna stop me? Well, that was Kanye, excuse me. Jane, what you feel about that?
I totally am 100% behind the power of mind. So that's part of what I'm hearing you say, that the intent, that where we put our mind, I'm sorry if it's going to sound new agey, but I mean, our minds create a reality. And we need to be careful where we put our mental energy. We need to put our energy into creating what we're here to create, what's in the highest, greatest good for all. And that's it, period. Just follow that. And it's like when fear comes in, when anything, when we're working against. So it's like, do I want to be working against something or do I want to be working for something?
Come on,
I want to be working for.
Come on now.
For. And the only for that I have is what my soul is showing me, what I've come here to do. That's my for, and I don't do anything else.
Yeah, I agree, to work on what the for is for. And I think that was the conversation with the peyote. Like, we're trying to create a situation where we can grow, where we can be for. And yet there's a lot of factions and fighting that's saying, no, we need to keep it criminalized. And so it's a very interesting sort of dynamic of like, well, let's just plant more. Let's spend more time putting seeds in the ground. You know, these are the things that help protect, not necessarily saying it doesn't exist, that type of thing. So, but yeah, no, I'm in agreement with that. And I think, unfortunately, you know, we see what's kind of the damage that's happening with cannabis, and you see the publicly traded companies happening. So even though we might not want to speak their name, I think we don't want to also be naive that they're not just sniffing around and making sure that they have their placement and what that looks like, because I think it's a real thing. You know, you see, I get news feeds and I, you know, see every day 3 or 4 new psychedelic pharmaceutical companies with these outrageous claims about what this panacea can do. And you're like, well, oh, wow, okay, wow. So that's happening. So to be aware as a community that this is happening and really be fighting for, I think is really the key there, instead of fighting against, you know, especially because it benefits those other entities when everyone's fighting within, you know, and we can all kind of work together on these types of things. So I know there's so many questions I'm just popping up here. So we've been talking for about an hour and 15 minutes, maybe open the floor for a little discussion. What do you folks say? Portland, does anyone in Portland have anything interesting that they'd like to share? Because we've been kind of enjoying the floor here for a bit.
A great opening. Like I've said, I think with 95 people, it might be a little bit hard. If somebody has something that they want to say and you're not a co-host, you can raise your hand and then we can maybe unmute you.
Or even if you've been keeping an eye on some of the questions, maybe there's a question that we missed or we didn't see or whatever that you think was important or relevant or interesting that you want to share.
I copied all of them. I'm over here. I have a Word document open and I'm like copying big questions.
Yeah. Do you see anything in there, Ohi, that's good to answer? I haven't been paying much attention.
One of them, somebody said, enlightenment doesn't care how you get there. I just want to say, amen. Amen to that one right there. Praise the Lord. Is it not true that whatever gets us to the soul home, whether it be plant medicine, meditation, breath work, or what have you, is it not true that whatever gets us to the soul home, whether it be plant medicine, meditation, breath work, yeah, but is it healthy the way I want to arrive healthy? I want to arrive with, you know, some sorts of me. I don't want to arrive dazed and confused. You know what I'm saying? And I definitely don't want to. It's just like a baby. You don't want to breach baby. Okay. The baby was born. Yeah. I want to come out right too. Okay. Is anybody using any of these plant medicines or psychedelics right now? Presenters, are you all able to teach and present when using any of these medicines? Lord, this sounds like at the Detroit Psychedelic Conference, we had something called Psychonaut Confessions. So I'm gonna go first and get mine out the way. I did microdose early this morning. I'm doing the Stamic stack with 0.3 grams of psilocybin and a niacin. Can I teach? Sometimes, but up to certain levels, it's my time. It's my time at certain levels of induction. So at certain levels, I have, as a warrior priest, I have to be able to just come up out of it and assist if that's what's needed. But like me, if I'm on 9 grams, don't ask me nothing. Like, you really won't even be able to find me because I won't be accessible because I'm following the rules of set and setting. But if I took a gram or two, or somebody snuck some weed into my CBD like Larry, I could still teach, but I prefer my particular setting where I can just go in. That's my answer.
Jane, you want to share? I have an idea too.
Why are we answering? Why are we what's the question? Why is this important?
Is anyone using any of these plant medicines or psychedelics right now? Presenters, are you able to teach and present when using any of these medicines? And Jane, you don't have to incriminate yourself. You can just move on, let Larry answer.
I'll let Larry, and then I may incriminate myself.
So me personally, cannabis, that's kind of a common theme for me. But I think what's it really was interesting about this question for me is I've really tried a lot as an artist to paint while journeying. Is it possible? It's so many brilliant things that I'm seeing. Like, can I get it somewhere? And this has always failed for me. And I've tried everything from starting like after I'm already journeying, so I'd be into the motivation of it, or maybe some people were like, well, you don't want to do that. You want to sort of start painting and then so you're in the flow of the painting process and then your experience happens. Well, 2 different experiences I can tell you about why this doesn't work for me, at least. One particular moment, I was trying to draw something and had some words and some concepts in there as well, and when I woke up the next morning to look at what I did, I realized that everything was done in this very small space because I was reading and writing 3-dimensionally. So I was writing up and down on the paper and side to side, which would have made sense in my experience, but it's on a 2-dimensional plane in this realm. So all of a sudden, it was just a scribble of stuff on top of each other. It'd been nice to be able to pull that out someday and figure out what exactly I said. And then the other thing was that when I paint, for some reason, I don't know why this happens, and other people maybe have had different experiences, but for me, this is how it works. Is like when I try and paint like that, it's like someone keeps moving the canvas away from me, and it's getting farther and farther away. It's almost like the experience is like, no, you don't want to be doing this right now. And so I feel like really like, whoa, the painting's kind of getting farther away. So for me, I think again, exactly like Ogie's saying, when you're in these experiences about yourself, or if you're in, sort of a community setting, it's about praying together, it's about connecting together. But in terms of actually engaging in this plane, it's not necessarily, at least for me, like, that's where I come with the integration too. I realized once upon a time that I wouldn't be a good guide because I was so interested in knowing what was happening while it was happening. What's happening now? Are you there yet? What about now? How about now? Da, 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 da. Like, oh, maybe I need to work with integration, since that's really unpacking the experience and talking to people about the experience and let the person have the experience as it's happening. So I think there's different dynamics. And I think definitely when it comes to, and there's psycholytic experiences where people work through the processing, and there's sort of that, psychotherapy that happens during the experience, and that can be really beneficial as well. But for me, I think, definitely like to leave the space for the experience to happen. And then afterwards we can talk about it, or afterwards we can check in about the education or the art or what have you.
Yeah, so first of all, I like microdosing LSD. I'm not on anything right now. I like microdosing LSD, but I'm selfish like you. I want that for me. And it's like, so I can microdose an LSD and I can have amazing day of creative writing, of creative thinking, of putting my programs together, reading books and integrating everything. That's what I love to do the most. I wouldn't want to waste it on using it for a presentation. However, in group situations, or for example in ceremony, I would do facilitator doses of things that would then open the heart, so there would be more. In other words, if there was an exchange wanting to happen or needing to happen, and I needed to open up the capacity for empathy and empathic connection, although that's pretty much there naturally, but for that, then I might use something that would help me do that, depending on the situation.
And in ceremony, for me, when I sit for people with mushrooms, not at the beginning, I don't suggest this, but I may go in on a light 2 grams, 2.5 grams, so I can be in a similar space with a person, and it hasn't affected me as far as sitting and providing for people and guidance and things like that.
Holy moly, 2 grams is light for you? That would send me over the edge.
Nah, that's...
So for me, it would be 0.2.
Come on to Atlanta, honey. I got you. Come on, I hold your hand. I hold your hand. Somebody else asked a question about the soul home. This might get us back into the tangent. How would you describe the soul home? Are there common elements of the soul home across cultures, Larry?
So I can't really speak across cultures, but maybe, you know, there's enough knowledge here in this call that could. But I know that there are themes that seem to come up. And, you know, I mean, I think it's so interesting, this idea of archetypes. Like, is there an archetype of your street corner, or does it exist? Is there an archetype of this being, as in we're all sort of visualizing this similar sort of thing with characteristics, or does it exist as an independent agent, you know, as wisdom on its own, you know? So I think that's one thing, but I think the common elements, as I mentioned earlier, is you hear a lot about the akashic records, or a place where all knowledge is, or a space where the teachers are. I hear a lot from folks, things like, you know, sort of a crystalline, translucent sort of castle, or places that people can go to where there's this like interaction, this like, you know, grand party, if you will. I've even heard that before, you know, and I think there's also like, you know, I think there's the Sione out of the, you know, sort of ayahuasca traditions. They'll actually, the story is that, you know, an ayahuasquero or a curandero will actually sing a location, and they'll all go meet, you know, next to the river in the second heaven next to the tree. And so there, again, there are places that people can go to, but I think in Western culture, we're pretty beginning novice in terms of sort of charting out the cartography of what consciousness or multiverse would look like, where I think a lot of other cultures maybe have spent a lot more time and have whittled down the ineffability to be a little bit more understandable between folks. So they're probably accessing places that we wouldn't even really realize as a space, because there's a similarity between this, like, you know, sort of community-based understanding. And we talk a lot about integration, and integration maybe isn't happening so much in some of these sort of traditional indigenous cultures because it's just embedded in the worldview, the cosmology, all that kind of stuff is there, right? Here it's like, oh, we saw a spirit world, and it's like, oh, that's crazy. What are we talking about? We have to make meaning of this, you know, because we're in a mechanistic, reductionistic worldview. And so the idea of spirit, the idea of sacred, the idea of multiverse, the idea of consciousness is something we're swimming in instead of inside of our brain, is where we're at. And so we have to make meaning of this other thing. But in these other traditional cultures, that's just part and parcel. That's just how it goes. That's, you know, you learn that from a little child all the way till, you know, and initiatory rites, and all the way through to death rates or death to death experience, you know? So, yeah, so I mean, I think that's also something that, you know, a lot of these areas can be really sacred. You know, ineffability has, I don't know if maybe you've heard this, ineffability has kind of 3 different areas. The first one is, I have no words to speak to what this is. The second one is, I can't really share it with you unless you've also been there. And the third one is, this is so sacred that I'm really not supposed to share it. So a lot of times within sort of this traditional cultural exchange and things like that, there are some folks who obviously have been inundated by colonialism, things like that, and are maybe a little bit more hesitant to share about some of these experiences because these are the sacred places. And so that's also something to just kind of be aware of as we sort of have these cross-cultural sort of conversations. What things do we need to sort of be open to in terms of sharing this dialogue, sharing these spaces, making there be enough trust that we can actually be open to these sacred experiences from others as well. I know he's got his finger up. So.
Oh no, I was just like, you got so many things running. As a student of history, and as Mudu calls me, a citizen scientist, in studying my passion before I got to entheogens was esoteric schools of thought and looking for the commonality in them, just like I used to look for the commonality in religions, right? So in esoteric thought and entheogens, because most esoteric comes from some forms of entheogen, the question you have to ask yourself before you come to us, because somebody says, oh, these are the speakers, we're going to ask them, is, are you ready for your initiation? Are you ready for your initiation? Through cultures everywhere, whatever planet, whatever skin color, whatever, there's an initiation. That's what Larry, to me, that's what you were just speaking of, like, if you've been initiated, then I could have this conversation with you about it. Somebody today was like, oh man, when you were on 9 grams, what happened? What happened? And then I heard Kalindi saying, hey man, there are no experts. So I looked at him and said, you'll tell me when you get back, because he was letting me know he hasn't had his own initiation at that space. And so I will hold space for you while you go through an initiation, and I'll meet you on the other side of the door. And then maybe those things will be answered for you. Senyata used to get me all the time when he used, that's my Tai Chi and Tantra instructor. He was like, I'm not going to spoil your surprise. And when I came back from my first journey on the toad, at the very, very end, the last words were, stop spoiling people's surprises. Stop spoiling because the surprise is a reward for your curiosity. The universe is curious. You can't live through Jane. Jane said she microdoses LSD. There's no need for me to ask Jane, how is that working for you? Boom, she's here. She's considered considered someone who knows what she's talking about. My question should be like, Jane, how do I do that? I'm going to ask somebody who's microdosed LSD how to microdose LSD. It doesn't matter, because her makeup is different than mine. And coming from an astrologer, her north node may be somewhere different than mine. I may go in on a different time when the moon is in Gemini versus the moon is in Capricorn, or it's a waning crescent versus a new moon. All these factors matter. So are you willing to go through several initiations, which is really what the fine print is? When the oh shits come through fine prints and initiations. Do you want to go through some initiations?
Jane, would you like to share anything?
You know what that brought up for me as you were sharing. I have always felt, and I still feel it very strongly, that that integration starts with preparation. So I'm a very big fan of preparation. And I love what you were talking about, about surprises. And I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, that's interesting. How do I actually, this is a paradox in my point of view. So I work with a lot of people who come to me because of their developmental trauma. So they're not coming for necessarily the big bang, right? They're coming for healing, for depression or anxiety or for PTSD symptoms, right? And yet I know for a fact that the healing, in order to have healing from those psychological issues, it's really crucial and important to have these ephemeral experiences, to have these spiritual experiences. And so what I do, what I feel is really important is in the preparation stage. In other words, my role is to give permission. I find that in the set and setting, if the set and setting isn't safe for the inner healer to take somebody to these other places, they won't go. So, and I think you brought that up brought that up in your presentation, Larry, that I was looking at, that you gave a few months ago, around the plate. That is it safe for, I'm not remembering exactly how you put it, but that the sitter has to be able to listen for certain phrases and certain qualities of experience, so that, because if the psychonaut is not feeling safe, that their experience is being held and heard, the psyche can close it down. So what I'm basically saying, unless we're holding the space and giving permission for the psyche and for the inner healer to take the psyche to wherever it needs to go, which means those soul home places, they may not necessarily go there because it will sense that this is not a safe environment for me to experience this in. It's not a safe environment for me to have these surprises. So I always bring this up in the preparation stage. That this is very important. This is what we can do to be open to the fact that you might have past life experiences. And I want to bring in something that has not yet been mentioned. So in indigenous cultures, we're traditionally working with shamans, right? So shamans are doing typically extractions. So they're clearing out energy, and they're also working with soul retrieval. And I find that I feel like my role is to assist people to prepare their psychological vehicle for parts of their soul to come back in. And those parts of the soul might be a traumatized infant, a traumatized 6-year-old, a traumatized 16-year-old, but the soul might also be left in another dimension, in another lifetime that has to also be retrieved, so that to have permission, but part of the soul may not have even incarnated into this lifetime. So when you're speaking about this whole process of soul home, I think that it would be negligent for us not to mention soul retrieval and what is entailed with that and how we prepare for that. And personally, I feel that once the psychological vehicle is prepared, it doesn't need, okay, and forgive me if I am wrong, but my opinion is that the soul knows it will come home on its own with a little bit of prompting or a little bit of permission for the person to allow that to happen in the right conditions and in the right setting. We don't actually need somebody to go out and find our soul for us and bring it back. We can do that ourselves under the right conditions.
Jane,
what?
Jane, when is your birthday?
Okay, I'm going to talk to you, get a reading from you. 9/1948. Go ahead. I just gave away my age.
No. I just needed to get just the ego energy of the Virgo, because you are triggering so much joy. I just tweeted. I'm over here posting your words on Facebook. I'm just like, yo, but man, I can't even. I'm just like, yes, thank you. Somebody else go ahead, Larry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's two different points there I think that are really beautiful in this whole process. Just again, as we're unpacking this really strange idea. The first is the idea of surprise. And I think there is somebody, I don't remember, somebody asked a question about surprise, but how important surprise is for transformation process, for getting us out of the rut. Surprise is it's the breathing. I think I mentioned this in the last talk too. It's this opportunity, even in there's like quantum change or conversion experiences, things like that. The surprise moment is like a very subtle, I don't want to say a trauma, but a subtle unexpectedness. It forces you out of your box into something new. It causes like a momentary reaction, and that momentary reaction is just enough separation to allow us to kind of have this bigger dialogue. So yes, I think surprise is important. Yes, you don't want to ruin it for somebody that's coming along, but then I think in the other side of it, where the ineffability conversation comes in, then we can sort of try and sort of whittle down to what it is that's that core source of thing that made us surprised. That because everything is relational. It's not a thing. It's a thing between things, those types of things. And then I think this is a really interesting conversation about soul retrieval in the context of soul home, because if we're here and this is illusion, are we retrieving our soul from the home to the illusion, or vice? So I'm really curious your thoughts on that, because I think I hadn't really thought about this before. But what are the implications of soul retrieval within the conversation of soul home?
I want some of that. Good question. So this is what you go ahead, Jane, because I can hold it now, because I do remember what I was going to say. I see you. Go ahead.
I just want to remind you guys that I don't agree with you about this being an illusion. I just want to remind you so that I see this as another dimension, not an illusion. So now go ahead. Can we reframe the question so it's not
Sure.
that this is not the illusory place that we're living? I know some spiritual practices think that, but so how can we rephrase that question so that
maybe the physical realm. We live in a 3-dimensional physical realm, and
Yeah.
the soul lives in a spiritual other realm, an ethereal realm or ephemeral. I don't know what the right word is there. Ethereal and ephemeral realm. It's not, you can't put, there's no substance to it in terms of like physical kind of things that we're dealing with here. So if this is the physical realm and our soul is spiritual somewhere else, transcendent, transpersonal, does bringing the soul back to the 3D physical realm shift the dynamic, or how, what's the yeah, I guess this is ineffable as I'm trying to like frame the question here. So I'll let Ohi go because I know he's itching.
So Jane is doing some amazing work, especially how she just, we've never met before, and she just categorized my body of work by saying, I'm here to help prepare you for your soul retrieval. So, but a cat like me, we have to talk about if retrieve means I lost some of it. How did my soul get away from me that I have to retrieve it? Ooh, my habits, my spiritual habits, my physical, my mental, my emotional, my financial habits is how I gain, and it's also how things can go away from me, right? And so sometimes a person, and then one of my things is limitations you fight for, you get to keep. So when a person has that surprise, they have an opportunity to say, I'm no longer going to choose this limitation. I'm going to choose the bandwidth of what this surprise just brought me. Some people shut down and still want to stick with their limitations. We have to respect that. I used to be the one who was just like, hell no, F your limitations. What the hell's wrong with you? Until I realized I was interfering with someone else's karma. And I don't do that anymore. I'm all about respecting me and respecting you. I got you to the place, you got to the door, and then you was like, nah, no problem. I'll see you this next trip when you come and you go again. It can be this lifetime or another. But what are the patterns that we're doing that we need to cease, that we're losing facets of our soul? The soul has 617 facets. I don't use profanity anymore, or definitely 90% less, because these particular energies, negative thoughts, negative actions, negative habits, chip away at this pure essence of creation. And so you lose a facet. Then a facet turns into a thought, or just, something that's disagreeable. But now if it's 100 of us on here and we all lose one facet, and they all, but because we believe that Muslim terrorists are bad for the world. So, okay, so if each of us lose one facet and they go join up, that's 100 facets. That's 1/6 of a soul. That thing now has mass and power and can start to influence. It's bigger than just a thought and an ideal. It may take form. This is the part where Kalinde was like, yo, everybody on planet Earth doesn't have a soul. There's a whole lot of soulless beings on the planet. No, we were not. No, that's an illusion. Oh, we're all created equal. No, because everybody here don't have souls. Everybody ain't here from planetary Earth as a home base, right? There's some visitors who just got here 8-9 years ago that are fully grown, that have 5-digit IQs. These are some things that we're going to have to start expanding the mind if we want to start expanding the consciousness. And the mind that I really was talking about earlier, Jane, was the abdominal mind. The abdominal brain is far more useful than this thing up here. This thing up here is dangerous. I call this the enemy of the state, but that's due to some of my studies. It's the abdominal, the gut, that really makes sure that you're safe. When you follow these instincts don't come from the mind. Instincts come from the gut. If I can get the instincts to be in charge and then tell the mind to go create something beautiful, I can follow that. But if I don't follow instincts and I let other things come in, I'm gonna get further away from soul home. I'm gonna get further away from being from my soul pieces that I have to retrieve. Some of these acts of kindness is one of the ways that you could use to start retrieving soul particles. Learning divine prayers, having an altar in front in your house, like different devices that help you start to commune with who you really are, because we don't do all this foolishness in our soul home that we participate in now. We don't do all this foolishness, man. We participate daily in a lot of tomfoolery. See, I used to use profanity. Right? I had like 6 words that was about to come out. But tomfoolery is what we participate a lot in, and we burning up a lot of soul energy. So we have to stop pushing it away. Stop making my job, Jane's jobs, Larry's job, some of you other healers' jobs so hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's some of the behavior? And one of the behaviors is honesty. Oh my God. Some people are just not radically honest enough with yourself. That's a big thing that can start bringing these pieces back. So when you get to ceremony, you're shown radical, honest things that really make you gasp, and things like that, that you can accept or ignore, but hopefully you accept. That's what we set all this stuff up for. We prepped you all for this, for the integration afterwards, but you can kill the integration if you don't accept the things I prepared you for. I got it nice and comfortable here for you. I got all the things that you need. There's no disturbances. And then you get to the threshold and then you be like, make it stop, make it stop. This is a part of it. And then we get to the end and we're trying to integrate, and you psychically made everything stop. I'm going to tell you, I'll see you in 28 days. We'll run it again. Or do you want some more told? We can do it right now. So that's my piece. Jane, what you got for me? Or Larry, somebody? The chat room's going crazy. Thank y'all.
Okay. First of all, you said so much there, Owie. So I don't even know where there were so many things you said that I wanted to riff off of here. So how did I lose parts of my soul? I love what you said about not choosing the limitation. So that's a big piece. But so a lot of it is habit. Like, so you're talking about habit, and that's absolutely true. So we're talking about preparing, right? So we're talking about preparing the vehicle to receive and be able to hold and maintain and sustain who we truly are as spirit soul in this physical body, right? But so that's like 50% of, maybe, no, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to say that's more like probably 90% of the work.
I was about to say.
So yeah, exactly. I know, I caught myself on that. But the reason is because the other 10% is about, this is where the mystery comes in. It's about, how did we learn those habits to begin with? I had to ask myself, yes, it took 90% of my time and energy. It took decades after my spiritual awakening in my 20s, right? It took 4 or 5 decades for me to prepare, for me to clear out the junk in my personality system to where I was able to hold and sustain who I truly am when I did that MDMA journey 5 decades later. That was 5 decades of preparation work. That's what I mean when I say the work is in the preparing. The preparation, we do the preparation, and then we do the big initiatory experience so that we can actually receive, right, what we're being given. And we're able to hold it in the body. So that's the piece that happens on this physical plane. But what I want to ask you, what I want to mention is that there's another piece of it, which is how was it that we came in to begin with that family that we came into, with the culture we came into, how did we get here and take on those patterns to begin with? That's the karmic piece. That's the mystery piece. That's what I am most curious about, because what I discovered was that my soul was broken or wounded before it came into this incarnation.
Yes.
And that's why I had to go back. I couldn't heal it in this life because it didn't source in this life. It had to be healed in past dimensions, in other dimensions, and in other lifetimes.
I wonder.
That's the mystery. That's the great mystery. That I don't know any meditation practice that really, I don't know. I think meditation can help us prepare this vehicle for this in this physical dimension, but I don't know any meditation or psychological process that can prepare us to receive the type of soul retrieval that I'm talking about, that was the actual cause of us coming into this situation that we came into to begin with. That has to be a medicine piece, because otherwise I just don't know how we actually access those realms. That's accessing those realms. How do we do that? We need medicine. That's why the indigenous cultures were living in those realms all the time, because they were using plant medicine. They were in that world all the time. They had access to these dimensions all the time. We don't have that.
I'm curious, Jane, this is really fascinating. Thank you for this. Through this conversation, it almost sounds like there's what's the difference between soul retrieval and repairing the thread to soul? Like if we're talking about the soul home, maybe is it that some of these threads are disconnected? And that's we're trying to, the soul retrieval, as we call it, would really be reconnecting these threads so that we have access to our soul in a bigger sense? Or are we retrieving it here in three-dimensional? I'm curious your thoughts on that, because it sounds like there's a relational thing happening as well as there's being like a retrieving broken pieces. And maybe there's a fixing process or a sort of remelding process that's kind of also happening there. What are your thoughts on that?
I actually I never thought that's such a fascinating question, Larry, because I never quite thought about that. Yeah, there's some kind of thread, right? I never thought about it that way. So there's some soul that's living out somewhere, right? Soul pieces out there, and then there's some thread or connection to those pieces. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I want to jump in. I saw Jerry. I see you over there, Jerry. So I misread Jerry's words, but it worked out right. So he said the plants are only training wheels. But did you know that the word plants and planets, so let's say if I reread that and I say the planets are only training wheels. Some people say we come from Mars because we're such a warful folks. They've written books that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Somewhere along your life, you've misplaced your wallet or your keys or your phone before you had to leave home. And everybody knows what's the phrase, what? Retrace your steps. Retrace, where were you when this thing happened? That's what true shadow work is. I've discovered in astrology, because I used to be like, astrology is the oldest data source on planet Earth. But how did they get the astrology from the heavens down here to dialogue it? Using entheogens. So the entheogens, the medicine, was what tied me into something that will not break the rules. See, all of you here are hard-headed. All of you here will take a shortcut every now and then. I know it. Yes, I can pick on Jayson if I want. He'll take a shortcut sometimes, then he catch himself, then he'd be like, oh, I shouldn't have took that shortcut. I'm certainly guilty. So when we go back and find, like, the universe is not that cruel. It is cold out there, but it's not that cold that it wouldn't leave us clues. Success leaves clues. So my research has shown that astrology shows you past life affairs. And these planets are your professors. These professors have a divine alignment to teach you something that you need this lifetime. You got 12 houses on your zodiac, but you're not going to have a planet in every house. So a house is a classroom. If there's no planets in there, you've already passed. Simple. If you got 4 planets in Scorpio, 3 planets in Virgo, 5 planets in Leo, you got a lot of professors wanting to talk to you, because that's the thing that you came here with. God blessed us, in some of my esoteric teachings, God blessed us with amnesia. You had all this knowledge. I knew all of y'all before. I knew all your real names and everything. But then guess what? I got down here and the amnesia struck, because if I knew how I was going to die, get rich, who I would harm, things like that, whether I was a shitty person or a priest, I wouldn't do anything. If I was disgusting, I'd sit around and do nothing. If I was supposed to win $1 billion, I sit around and do nothing. This is where the creative intelligence, the mega force, is smarter than we are. That's why I'm into allowing, like this word right there on my thing on my wall, allow. When you stand in the river and you trust it, there's already a plan happening that's several lifetimes, thousands of lifetimes it took to get you here, to get you to this point, to say, okay, or to say, nah. But because all these dimensions are working in order to get you to come to some sort of realization so you can play your small part, which you may think is huge. Your small part may be huge. Mother Teresa didn't think what she was doing was big. Gandhi didn't think it was that big. Martin Luther King, he kind of knew it was big, but he still didn't understand, right? So it's the same thing with us. Mine is, go back into that astrology chart. Those things are definite. They came with me. That's my set of instructions. I had it before my social security card. Oh my God. Everybody's like, oh, he stole my identity. Yeah, but you don't even know your astrological chart, you know? So these basics, that's self-discovery. You want to get the self-mastery, you want to get out of here, you're going to have to look at the clues you already have, or otherwise, I left my keys downstairs, but I spent time outside looking for my keys. No, look in the kitchen. I'm wasting a lot of time looking outside in the yard. I didn't even go out in the yard today. Last place I was at was in the kitchen. So just scour the kitchen. Oh, here they are. So that's my particular piece on that. Thank you for triggering that, Jane. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you because I love astrology and I mean, it's just so right on. Yeah, totally agree.
I'm just catching John Lawrence at the end. I know you were about to say something. I'm sorry, Larry, but he said, can you address the subject of where dreaming fits into this topic? For me, dreaming is transdimensional hopscotch. You're just going to another dimension and you get to determine it by that last hour before you go to sleep. You watch Star Trek before you go to sleep, you might get some Star Trek stuff. You watch a horror movie, you're going to get some horror movie stuff. You meditate before you go to sleep, you might get to have a little more control in the lucid center, right? So, yeah, that's my piece on the dreams. Anybody else want to jump in on that? Or Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think I remember Kazzrie had some, I think you were interested in this conversation at some point. So if you want to add any pieces, please do. Otherwise, yeah, go ahead. There you go. Perfect.
Well, I'm here, but I didn't have anything to say at this particular moment. I know as a facilitator, we're coming up on 6 o'clock. We're not there yet. And so I have put a link in about feedback form, but yeah, I didn't have anything to add at this particular moment on the floor.
I think,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. I just think dreams are a crucial part. Right. So it's part of all of my client prep is to start tracking dreams, and working with dreams and microdoses and low doses are totally amazing. Dreams are, I think, that's what Oi was saying. They're portals into these other dimensions, and we have access to them every night. We can use them, and combined with low doses of medicine, they're amazing. Amazing facets of learning. Amazing. We're given that capacity to enter into that portal every night and then bring it back into this physical dimension and work with it and utilize it.
Yeah, I know for myself, I have some pretty active dreams, but I haven't quite had a dream that's like an entheogenic experience. You know, there's some other thing happening. Like most of my dreams are even though they might be fantastical, they're kind of realistic. I can imagine them actually happening. And some of my entheogenic experiences is just I couldn't even imagine this type of thing, you know, those types of things. But I found that after ayahuasca, sometimes the ayahuasca experience will pull into my dream space. And I've been able to access dream space, and I've known other people that can access dream space in their ayahuasca experience. Seldom, but sometimes more, access the ayahuasca experience through the dream space. But, you know, this gets into this whole big conversation about, especially if you can do lucid dreaming and can kind of sort of navigate around the dream in a sort of a conscious state. And what does that sort of mean or refer to? But for myself, I haven't actually experienced the medicine experience that I can remember. because again, who knows, maybe I'm experiencing that all day long and I just don't remember them in my dream state. I'm curious, have you, either of you, had that experience, or what do you see as sort of the base similarities or differences between the two?
I think they're both,
yeah, go ahead.
they're both ways to access other dimensions. So it's like apples and oranges, but so for me, it's like jumping back into the dream, jumping through a portal back into the dream and start exploring it on medicine or not on medicine. I mean, medicine can enhance the meaning or the symbology that might come through. So actually, I had an experience of a life on Pleiades that I was able to access because of a dream. If I hadn't had that dream, I don't know that I would have been able to access that dimension. And that was, on a microdose of mushrooms. And that experience then actually explained and helped heal a huge issue that I had been dealing with in this life. So it wasn't until that experience, my experience on Pleiades, that I was able to retrieve that aspect of my soul and come back and actually, make sense of my life here.
Are you microdosing before? You're microdosing them before you go to bed, or is it right before you fall asleep?
No. That particular, I don't think that it matters. It's the intention. So you take them if you have time. So you have a few hours, right? You take a microdose and you intend to go back into the dream and explore it. So you're being just completely open to receive whatever messages the dream, your inner healer is giving you through the dream symbology.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
It's the same thing that you would do just if you were doing a dream process, like a Jungian dream process. You just heightened it a little bit with a microdose, and it's more powerful that way.
I have a friend.
But you can do it without that. What?
I had a friend that said sometimes the microdose would keep them awake. Do you have that's why the timing thing that they were trying to okay, if I have it right before I fall asleep, then I fall asleep, then it kind of kicks in and won't keep me awake during that process. What are your thoughts on that in terms of just logisticals?
Well, I actually have a 2 cents. I was going to say earlier about the micro and macro dosing. Because I think OE mentioned something about maybe an amount that to me sounded more like a mini dose. Because I microdose for depression, and I take 1/10 of a gram like every other day, and I can't tell either of those the same. It's just keeping this really micro level. So that shouldn't necessarily interfere with your sleep, but I do choose to take it first thing in the morning in case it is going to kind of have some sort of stimulating effect. And, macrodose is whatever it is for us that either, sometimes you're incapacitated and sometimes you're very out there. And then there's that mini dose, which could be something I've heard people mention here where it sounds like they're calling it a microdose, but they're talking about an effect. And I think sort of the definition is that if you get an effect, it's maybe a mini dose, but it's not micro, because micro is sort of supposed to be subperceptual, even though it is doing something, because otherwise you wouldn't be taking it.
Everybody on here has a clear quartz crystal somewhere in your house, okay? Or smoky quartz crystal. Look at it. Now, don't look at it, look in it. Just look in it. That's how many possible realms that you can explore. And you've just got yours that may be as big as 2 fingers, right? So there's so many places to explore. Like, there's no destination. That's the part I'm in now. Like, the home is the journey. I'm at home when I'm journeying. But when I continue to be like, I haven't got there yet. You ain't gonna never get there. You gonna stay here in the trance, trapped up, trapped off, donating your energy to someone else's causes for unfair compensation. I don't mind donating my energy to you, but for some fair compensation. But if I am donating my energy to you so you can like continue to stack upon all this death and destruction and disease that we have here on this little local rock that we call Earth? Nah, I can't do that. There's so many realms. So you have to see, what are you looking for? That's a lot of things that I think a lot of people don't express when it comes to like their soul home. Well, what if I ask you to describe your soul home and you never had this conversation with us? Like, could you describe it? Could you describe what better looks like? Could you describe what best case scenario looks like? Right? I think that piece is really important for us to start detoxing. As Sister Myra used to teach me, you got to deprogram before you reprogram. Kalinde said the same thing. 5 grams, 7 grams, and 9 grams is dealing with earthly stuff. Then you can push past. You're not allowed to go through TSA holding a weapon, right? Or liquid. So it's the same thing. You're not allowed to go to these places where it's super volatile. Bitcoin isn't volatile. When you get out into these multiverses and it's the journey of the alone, for the alone, by yourself, oh, that's volatility. What if you practice here before you get out there? And that whole thing about, that's why I love one thing I really love about Decrim Nature is how they are giving the KI network the opportunity to share techniques for sitting with people on higher doses or macro doses or whatever you want to call them, because integrating from 7 grams is different than integrating from 2 grams or microdose, right? And it ain't for everybody. And we just have a different type of crazy. We're better than nobody else. We just got a different type of crazy. But it's all going to fit because the mycelium, that's what I call all this, is coming from somewhere. Like, do we know where mycelium comes from? Do we know where electricity comes from? Do we know where consciousness begins at? I'd rather focus on those questions than talking about the predators and things like that. I had 2 questions that I wanted to, I saw that I went back at. Is the time of day important to the journey during ceremony? As an astrologer, the frequency on planet Earth changes every 2 hours. That's all. The frequency on Earth changes every 2 hours. I like nighttime stuff. That's me. You know, I have most of these plants, they do a lot of things underground in the dark. So that's in my setting. If I can get my settings where they're comfortable and then induce them into my body, now they're triple comfortable. So I'm going to say that. If you do study astrology or you're one of my students, remember the rising sign. So for 2 hours, there's an Aries energy. For 2 hours, there's a Taurus energy. For 2 hours, there's a Gemini energy. For 2 hours, there's a Cancer energy. Which portal do you want to slide into? I'm always looking at what the rising sign is and what the moon is when I'm about to go take something. Now, the toad doesn't care. 5-MeO DMT doesn't give a damn about you. Over 30 grams, go anytime you want. But when you're just coming up here, yeah, it matters. But once you start getting crazy, it don't matter. And then the other one that says, can you talk about how near-death experiences fit into the soul home? That was a good question. I want to hear what Larry and Jane have to say about that. Can you talk about how near-death experiences fit into the soul home? Larry, go first.
Yeah, I mean, so this is actually something I touched on in my dissertation a bit about near-death experience. And what is a near-death experience? And does a near-death experience really count when you're talking about psychedelics? Because Moody defined near-death experience as a physical near-death. Somebody actually almost died and they came back. They medically died when they came back to the body. So that's what a near-death experience is. But when you look at the qualities of the experience, you're talking about a death and rebirth experience. The person feels that they're dying. They feel that they go through the portal. They feel that they go to the other side. Everything's out of body experience when you're talking about some of these farther out experiences. So the idea of out of body experience is in body, out of body. That's always a hard one to frame. But I've actually kind of suggested in some of my work that we need to maybe find another term for near death and leave near-death experience for a physical near-death where people are experiencing this oftentimes it's a heavenly place. Maybe it's a soul home. I haven't really heard it because the language hasn't really been sort of, and this I think they could learn from each other, you know. But I think the idea of near-death experience, you have to be cautious, at least in terms of integration process, because when I say to somebody, oh, you had a near-death experience, let me integrate it, I think, okay, he almost died but didn't. But that person's physical or that sort of a psychological or spiritual experience was, I went through the process of death. I experienced what death was. I went through the other side and then I came back. So the meaning making process is going to be slightly different between those two just basic general understandings. And so so I don't know if that really answers the question, but that's something I've been kind of working with. Can we use a different terminology than near-death experience? Because by definition, that means physical near death, not egoic or transpersonal and other types of death and rebirth experiences.
Yeah, just say I was scared shitless. I was scared shitless. Obviously, I was about to die because I was scared shitless. Excuse me for the profanity. I did.
Yeah, wait a second. Wasn't that when you said earlier about profanity? What's going on?
I did really good. I did really good. 1 word in 3 hours. Excellent.
And I really hate to cut this off because I feel like we could go for 1,000 hours, and yet it's usually good, since we said 4 to 6, that we wrap it up. And we could, if you guys want to stay on the line, I will definitely keep it open. Casey, the PPS president, asked me to remind everybody that we do have a volunteer program, and we have a new liaison program, which is if you're new to PPS and you'd like some answers, you'd like somebody to help you find your way around, you can sign up to get to be paired with a liaison. And if you have a lot of experience, you can actually sign up to get trained to be a liaison. And I put stuff like that in the chat. I'm excited personally to potentially have another, maybe a monthly spiritual event like this. And if you fill out the feedback form that asks you, allows you to give some feedback on how this went for everybody and what you might want to do next time. I could throw it back to you guests to say, if you have ideas for next time or have feedback or have kind of like wrapping up information. Too, for people, if you do fill out the feedback form, you can give us your information, and there's check boxes to say that you would like Larry or Oe or Jane to contact you, and I will facilitate getting your information to them if you fill that out.
Wow.
I will hand it to you guys.
Oh, you are amazing.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you both to Ohi and Jane and to the Portland Psychedelic Society and everybody that attended today. You'd always know it's a good event when you have as many questions at the end as you did when you started, and we were able to unpack so much stuff. I think this is really juicy conversation, so thank you both. I think I'm always a student when we're in these conversations because there's just so much to learn. So that's all I have to say. I would love to be able to help continue on and have different conversations as time moves on. So let me know. But what an honor to be on stage with all you folks, and really, really a pleasure to have this dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love meeting you both and having this conversation. It's really good, exciting stuff. So, Larry, thank you for bringing this up as a topic. It's right on. I just want to say one other thing. If those of you if you don't know the work of Michael Newton, who is a hypnotherapist, he actually worked with 7,000 people. So he's got this was his first book. And so if you want to actually so he's a hypnotherapist, and this was his work. He discovered this work of other dimensions, past lives, life between lives, and he researched it. So there are many commonalities between people's experiences, the levels of souls, beginner souls, intermediate souls, advanced souls, what happens on the other side and between the dimensions. This is somebody who was not doing entheogens, but I think that it's very valuable information to add to your repertoire.
That's awesome. And before Oe talks, I'll insert that it's interesting to me to not, I don't necessarily know that I see a difference between hypnosis, meditation, guided meditation, intentional use of psychedelics. Is kind of to me, it's all within a similar experience. But yeah, Oe, you want to have some parting information for folks?
First off, I gotta give a big shout out to Jayson, period, because I'm a one of my teachers said you can't kill all your demons. You just have to stay just ahead of them, right? And so from my past, I never forget like the glue, you know what I mean? Like how this brother stepped up to help make the Detroit Psychedelic Conference a success, and how his mind is such a visionary to say, hey, you want to try this? Hey, I think that, have you thought about this? And then that leads to an invitation or even suggesting to you all, hey, why don't we get crazy ass Oye to come over here and talk some of his craziness? So I got to do, you know what I'm saying? Big shouts out to my brother J Rock, J Love over there, you know what I'm saying? And then all of you other crazy people here who also have decided to meet up from the belly of this star that we used to chill in, and now we're over here chilling again, right? But this time we want to level up and take it to a couple notches. I'm just really humbled, right? Really happy I didn't get emotional tonight, you know, because the questions kept flowing in and things like that. Y'all didn't hit one of my emotional trigger buttons. That was good. And I'm inspired. So whenever y'all want me to do this again with Jane and Larry, or just Jane or just Larry, because I could really go now. You know, I've been rocking with Larry just a little bit and hearing him on one side, but I didn't know he had all this. I didn't know who Jane was, and now she got all this. Now I'm trying to go see who Jane is. I'm trying to see who the whole squad is. And when Kalinde used to do blogs like this with us, he'd be like, okay, I've given you 3 hours. I'm finished. We would do an after party, you know? And so when Kazzrie said, yo, you know, if y'all want to stay on here for the after party, I'm gonna stay here for the after party. But, you know, my final thoughts are, I would love to keep all of you in my particular loop. The easiest way is to go to coachescloset.com and just get that, click the red button, put your information in. Larry, don't do nothing. You already on my mailing list. Or you can go to the kinetwork.com and fill out that form as well, because this thing here, this is disruptive technology. This conversation is disrupt. We are the innovators here. This is it. You know, if you're watching, if you caught this on the replay and you stayed all the way to the end, you really an innovator. You really are a disruptor. And we need more of you. Someone asked that question. I'm gonna answer this last question. I'm gonna just say something on it. Larry and Jane might jump on it because this one was really good about collectiveness, when they said there are a lot of us relatively experienced psychonauts now. Many of us have done a lot of the personal healing. We're working in the transpersonal now. How can we harness our collective wisdom to advance conscious evolution? My answer is keep doing what you're doing. Don't try to think for the universe. If you just keep trekking on your thing individually, you're going to run into others, psychonauts that feel you, okay? That's my particular strategy. How to advance conscious evolution? Keep doing what I'm doing. Keep inspired. I want Jane has inspired me right now. I want to be like, oh, I'm ready to go out and smoke my little thing first though. But keep doing what you're doing. Jane, how do you feel that we can harness our collective wisdom to advance conscious evolution?
It's absolutely back to the power of mind. It's what I've been talking about. It's with intention. So I'm totally with you. Yes, we have to just totally, we are already connected. We're already unified. We're already transpersonal. We're already one. So if our only job is to follow our heart, to keep moving in the direction that we're guided to move, that's it, period. And to hold the intention. So this is something I always do, that any healing, as far as I'm concerned, is my personal healing is done. And my personal healing now becomes transpersonal, becomes collective healing. So any healing I do on myself now is for the collective. And I hold that intention always in ceremony. whether it's with myself, with another person, with a group of people. I am always in process of healing for the collective now.
Larry, let me repeat
Yeah,
it for you one more time. I want to read it. How can we harness our collective wisdom to advance conscious evolution?
I think just, there's a saturation of these types of talks out there, but to have this type of talk is different. There's a lot of people doing talks, but this is the type of talk that's going to harness that. And that's what I think has really been beautiful about this, is like we're asking the bigger questions, we're asking the transpersonal questions, we're doing the collective healing. But if we're all in our own sort of individual areas, we're not coming together, we're not seeing each other, we're not hearing each other, not feeling connected in these areas where maybe we feel, oh, that was a weird experience. What is this? Does other people even have or know what that is about? So to have these conversations, to come together, to dialogue together, I think is really, really, really critical. And to make this, to normalize this as a conversation, like, yes, we can talk about all the other different types of healings that are happening and all the medical research that's happening out there. But I think all of us know when you go deep enough, this is really what's part of helping cure depression or anxiety or any of these other things. And so this conversation needs to be had more often, so it doesn't become this quote unquote new agey thing, but becomes a conversation that we're all able to have confidently, so that we can get that ineffability qualities and kind of tone it down into these like pieces of information that we can share more easily with each other. So I think this is all part of it. Obviously Decrypt Nature, I'm going to be biased on that one. Decrypt Nature is also part of it, giving people, making sure that people know that they can have access, they can grow their own, they can gather their own, they can connect with community. And that's part of it as well, I think, and through all these processes together, then we're helping to heal others who maybe are new to this experiences. And then they can come into a conversation like this and be like, wow, there's a really big community about this. This is really important questions that are happening, profound. So yeah, I think this is a part of it. So thank you all for helping to do this together.
So just one other phrase for me, it's reaching as many people, help us all wake up out of the trance. That's my intention. That's what my work is about. That's what I'm all about. How many people can we help wake up out of the trance of this culture?
I'm going to jump on that and amend it just a little bit. How many willing people can I help wake up? See, don't waste your energy with those who aren't willing. When those who save your energy for those who come to you. Don't go looking for someone who really doesn't like you, doesn't support what you're doing, doesn't believe in what you're doing. Only help the willing. And there's plenty of willing. There's tons of willing. I was talking to Carlos and Larry about that. I don't care about converting anybody. There's so many people that are willing, that want to talk to us, who've never had that experience. And then they look at me and see me debating some butthole over here. I'm not debating you. Are you willing? I want to talk to Jerry. You know what I'm saying? I want to talk to Dylan. I want to talk to Tara. I want to talk to folks who are willing. You know what I'm saying? They come with that willing spirit, because then it turns into casting pearls to swine. And I don't have any pearls to cast to swine anymore. I'm out. I'm tapped all the way out. And I don't have any arrows to shoot at meaningless targets just for sport. Where I'm at, it's for real. I can hear Jane's at a for real warrior level. Don't let the platinum fool you over there with Jane. She's a real spiritual warrior. She's not playing no games out here in these streets, in these psychedelic streets, in these healing streets. So, and I'm sure she doesn't chase somebody who doesn't come to her. She's got plenty of folks that, you know what I'm saying, see the vision. And those are the folks. I'm looking for 1 million of those, so we can 1 million monkeys versus 100 monkeys. You know what I'm saying? So
totally on board, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So do any of you three, I'm here from OE, he's staying and I'm staying. Would other, should we call this the end? And but the point where we call it the end, also, I'm going to stop the YouTube stream. And I don't know if Jason's already stopped, or I'm going to stop the Facebook. He's doing the YouTube. And then we can continue to are we ready for the after party portion of this? Okay, we still got 63 people. I'm happily surprised to see there's still 63 other folks besides
I do have to prepare for a talk I'm giving at UC Berkeley tomorrow, so unfortunately I have to take off, but it's been such a great conversation that I really look forward to another one. I mean, even a part 2, maybe a different conversation to talk about, but anything. But this was, I mean, when you said earlier, like, what are we getting? What's the return? What's the reciprocation? Like, I feel nourished right now. I feel like saturated with wisdom, saturated with goodness. It's just such a pleasure to be able to really kind of dialogue in this kind of way, in these deep kind of ways. And so I really sort of thank you very much, everybody, for that. It's been really great. So I'm going to say goodbye.
Thanks for putting this together, Larry.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you.
Yeah.
All. Yeah. So thank you very much,
Thank
everybody. Have a wonderful evening. I'll talk to you soon.
You did good.
Everybody, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just hanging out for the after party. You know what I'm saying?
I have an appointment in 10 minutes, so I can hang out for 5 minutes, but then I'm going to need to leave. Oh, I got to get an astrological reading from you. I'm so excited.
OYE517.com, and whoever invited you has my number. So all you got to do is just be like, yo, put us together. I'll take care.
Okay.
We get all
We'll maybe do a debrief with you guys, or at least be in touch. I'll put you all in touch. Thank you so much. I'm going to go take a moment and turn off the Facebook. And I did change it so that now the 56 people remaining can unmute themselves and speak. And then maybe Jayson will adjust the view so we can go to just gallery view, or maybe I can do that.
Hey, Jane, did you put your contact information in the chat?
No.
Could you do that?